Introducing NASM One, NASM's ultimate membership program. Unlock access to everything your fitness career needs to succeed. Unlimited CEUs, free courses, access to our premium app, and exclusive discounts, all for $35 a month. NASM One is best-in-class tools, cutting-edge certifications, confidence in your craft, and everything you do as a personal trainer made easy, so we can achieve our greatest goals together as one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I am Wendy Batts, here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Marty Miller. Marty, how are you?
I'm doing great. Wendy, how's it going today?
Things are going very well. This is a topic I know you and I have a lot of passion about. But before we dive in, I do want to discuss quickly about an unbelievable opportunity that NASM is giving our listeners. If you guys scroll down and look in the show notes, you're going to see a link that's going to take you over to a survey. And you're going to fill out some questions regarding the podcast. Hopefully we are exceeding your expectations, but we want the truth and want to know how we can better ourselves. So if you take some time, fill out that survey, you have the opportunity to win a $100 gift card to Amazon. And so we would love your feedback, and we would love for you to take the time to do that. So then therefore, hopefully you will be the big winner to some of the gift cards that NASM will be giving out.
I love it. And then they can probably go buy some fitness equipment or some fitness swag, something, right?
Or after they give us a 5-star review, they can just send us a gift about how amazing we are, right? Just kidding.
I'll take the 5 stars. That'll be good there.
That is a gift, by the way, and we would appreciate that. And we'll give you our contact information too, so that at the end you can let us know if there are certain topics we can talk about. But Marty, we are going to talk about the corrective exercise continuum, but we're also going to talk about how to blend it. And we've done this in the past, and we still get questions sent to us regarding, I still have questions here, I'm really not sure. And are they two separate things? How do you do corrective exercise and phase one? Isn't that too much? So we wanted to discuss this a little bit differently, in high hopes that maybe we can clarify some questions that keep coming in. I know in my inbox, and I'm sure yours too, Marty.
Right. So, I'll start with the 80,000 foot view, and we're going to go through it. But the corrective exercise model can be a full program for somebody that's either coming off significant injury or issue, remember your scope of practice, but maybe they're ready to be introduced back into fitness, or it could be a targeted warm up. I do correctives every day. It could be 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be 30, 40 minutes. It can be. You can use it as that targeted warm up before you get into any phase of training. But first, let's talk about human movement science. So the kinetic chain, we've done a lot of podcasts on this. You can go back wherever you would listen to your podcast, put in Master Instructor Roundtable. I promise you'll find a couple. Also, you can check out NASM's YouTube channel, put in Master Instructor Roundtable and kinetic chain, things like that, and you will see a very extensive podcast on this. But that's how the whole body is integrated and works together. So when we look at the term regional interdependence model, you'll see here a graphic where you have 3 circles. They're overlapping in certain areas. You got the nervous system, the skeletal system, the muscular system, right? And in between where all 3 of those connect, it's the HMS, the human movement system. One is not more important than the other. But the way I look at it as a personal trainer, you have a lot of focus on the muscular system as well as the nervous system by getting the right muscles to fire at the right time, getting some muscles to kind of calm down a little bit with your inhibition techniques, some muscles to work a little harder with your activation techniques. From that, you're working on those 2, and then the skeletal system has a chance to move better as well. So all 3 of these are going to be intertwined. But as a personal trainer, you're going to really be focusing on those 2 big circles, the muscular system and nervous system. There are professionals like myself or Wendy in that healthcare space that can go directly work on the skeletal system or the muscular system differently with hands-on techniques. But with your corrective exercise skills and the OPT model, you're going to make a huge impact on how all 3 of these work together for optimization or the best human movement possible.
Well said, Marty.
Thank you.
I love this slide, and we have used this slide since Marty and I
That's
started teaching, which was over 20 years ago. And the reason being is because it's a very easy way of understanding a muscle imbalance. And so when we talk about having optimum neuromuscular efficiency, what that means is the right muscle is firing at the right time in the right plane of motion. If there is a muscle compensation, meaning that we see throughout the assessments, which we will go over here shortly, and you'll see something that's not working correctly, the body it tattles on each other. Like it'll say, listen, because if your feet and your calves are really tight, meaning the lateral gastroc is overactive, it may cause your feet to turn out. Even if you think that they're straight, you look down, they're not. So muscles will start to tell on itself because of the way people stand, the way people sit, the way people hold their shoulders and their head. And so we want to make sure that we have everything in optimal alignment. If we don't, what ends up happening, and as you can see on the image, it should be straight up and down. And you should think about a 90-degree angle, and that, like, especially if it's a hinge joint, that it's bending the right way. Because if not, think about a door. If the hinge isn't moving correctly over time, and you've got some issue with the hinge, then it's going to start wearing down. It starts making noises, and then you're going to end up having to replace the door or the hinge or both. And so when you're looking at a muscle itself, you can see that there's one side that's shorter and one side that's longer. So think about the way that the body moves. As one muscle contracts, the opposing muscle has to lengthen. And so if you think about the bicep, as I bend my elbow, so I go into elbow flexion, I'm shortening my bicep, the tricep has to lengthen. If my tricep can't completely lengthen because I have an overactive bicep, and you may see this in the overhead squat when somebody struggles to fully extend their elbow when their hands go overhead, then that's a compensation, meaning that the muscle is not allowing the other one to pull it back into proper length. And so if you notice that one muscle is overactive, the other side then becomes underactive. And the sad thing about this, and the reason I like to talk about this I say quickly, but if a muscle is overactive, it doesn't mean it's overly strong. And that's sometimes where we get confused. Oh, it's overly strong. It's going to be even stronger than it could be if it's a normal length. That is not the case. If a muscle is overactive, it's weak. And if it's underactive, it's also weak. And so that's why we do the CES, is to get better alignment. So we have better range of motion, and we're going to have the best output for that prime mover to do its job without having to recruit all its neighbors or synergists to help it out.
No, you covered that so well, Wendy. Just trying to get back to ideal posture so the muscles have their best chance to fire, which means then they have the best chance to produce or reduce force or stabilize force as intended, which gives us the best human movement outcomes.
Nice summary, Marty. I should have had you take that slide.
You go do all the work. I'll summarize it. Off we go. Now, so I'll jump in here. So for any of you that have not taken the CES, I highly recommend it. It's a passion of both Wendy's and mine, because it only elevates what you're going to try to do in the other phase of training. So there is a flow, and we'll teach this at length in the course. I'll touch on it briefly here just so you can kind of hear it if you're listening in, or if you're looking at the graphic here. So first, client intake, right? That's where we build rapport. We make sure that they're ready and we're capable of dealing with this individual, because everyone has different things they bring to the table. First and foremost, we look at their static posture, right? That's going to tell us a lot there. Wendy and I both will tell you that as they walk into the gym or as they walk away from us the first time, we're still going to be looking at that, but we'll start with static posture. Then we go into our overhead squat assessment, the transitional type of movements, right? You've got the overhead squat and the modified, to see if you can rule out certain dysfunction. Is it a hip and ankle issue, or foot and ankle, or is it a hip issue? There's tests for that. Then if appropriate, we can go into a single leg squat or split stance or a split squat assessment, because we really want to see what happens on a single leg. It's great when you're on two legs, but I always say, it's not too far away from Easter. We don't hop around like bunnies. We walk from one leg to another, just depending on the depth and the velocity. So we have to try to see what happens on a single leg. That's the real test of what's happening. And that's why in the newer CES version, they added the split squat assessment, because not everyone can do a single leg squat. Then from there, we have potentially dynamic assessments. They're optional. And we have loaded assessments. So you can do things at higher speed, or you can do things under load, like a push or a pull. Then to screen out to see where, if we can really be very sharp or more like a sniper, with our approach, we have mobility assessments. So somebody may have feet turning out, but is it a restriction or is it a muscle weakness? And with these mobility assessments, you can really narrow your focus and think about, hey, you know what? It's not a mobility issue. It's only a weakness. I don't need to do that stretching technique. I can focus on the activation technique. Sometimes you'll still need to do both. And we cover that in depth with the corrective exercise course. And then from there, then we get into our programming. So the 4 phases is inhibit anything that's overactive, just down regulate it. I view it as kind of a dimmer switch on a light. It's not an on and off switch. It's dimmer switches. You're trying to get back to the right balance. And then we would lengthen those overactive tissues. Then we would activate or upregulate or turn the dimmer switcher a little brighter on certain muscles so they're ready to do something or work harder. And then an integration technique is when we get the whole body moving together so that way we can produce optimal movement throughout the entire kinetic chain.
So now we're just going to briefly go over these because I know that you've seen it, but as Marty just stated, this is kind of going through exactly what he just said and some of the assessments and why we do what we do, but then you can actually see it. So once again, static posture, ideally you would have the individual stand there with no shoes. This figure right here, the person is wearing shoes. So it's not as ideal because again, think about if someone is wearing shoes, the arch support could help someone's foot if it's weak and they're usually they flatten their foot or pronate. We might not be able to see it with shoes on. And then of course, if they pronate, it will affect the knee and the hip and everything up the kinetic chain. So we just try to go ahead and limit those factors. And then we're just looking at everything from the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. We look at the ankle, the knee, the hip, the shoulder, the ear from a lateral view, posterior view, and anterior view. And the one thing too, it's very common for someone to have one side that may have like shoulder elevation. The other one may be dropping lower. Somebody might be slightly rotated when they're trying to stand straight. So you're just looking without movement, how does that person stand comfortably from what is ideal?
No, I love that, Wendy. You know, I know you're a huge fan of the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, and it's a great overview. So for those of you just joining in today on the Master Instructor Roundtable, Marty Miller here with my co-host, dear friend Wendy Batts. We're talking about corrective exercise, the value of corrective exercise, and blending that into a phase 1 programming. So as we move forward here off the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, remember, those are critical. You're going to want to look at those throughout every single exercise. You're always assessing. So on those 5Ks. So we'll move forward here and continue on talking the value. So when we look at the transitional assessment overview, the overhead squat assessment, the purpose, and then the single leg and split squat assessment purpose. I touched on them briefly, Wendy, when we saw everything there in the slide, but I'll let you jump in here and go a little deeper.
Yeah, I mean, if we go to the next slide, we actually are going to go deeper. Actually, I forgot that I took those out. But anyway, in the overhead squat, what we're doing is putting someone in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. And we just want to see under movement, how does the body respond? And when we say under movement, they're just doing they're going down to about chair level, shoes off in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. And do we notice any deviations from where they started to where they end? They're not doing anything extensive, meaning if they can only do 3 squats, they're only doing 3 squats per view. We suggest in the book 5. I suggest if you're working with a professional athlete that you just set them up one time, and you as the practitioner or the health professional or fitness professional, you walk around them from the anterior, the lateral, the posterior view, and then make kind of maybe 1 or 2 circles and then see if there's any changes in each view. And then at that point, you're going to mark everything you see. Now, when you're thinking about the single leg squat and the split squat, it's one or the other, not both. And the reason that they added in that split squat was because people were really struggling standing on one leg, and balance is a problem. We know that. So we're giving them the chance to go ahead and have both feet, so 2 points of contact on the ground, but with a smaller base of support. And so we will still be able to see if there's compensations happening on the front leg and or the back foot, because sometimes when someone goes down and does a lunge, we don't really focus on the back leg and what's happening, but their heel may be turning outwards, their hips may shift, the knee may cave forward on the front, but also in the back. And so you can get a lot of really good information. However, if someone can safely do a single leg squat, meaning that if you saw their feet turn out, the knees cave in when they were doing 2 two-legged overhead squat and it was significant, you don't want to have them go on a single leg because you already gathered that information and you're pretty much spot on. Plus, think about the excess pressure that you would be putting on the medial knee, and we don't want to do that. So we always want to think about safety first. So if you're not sure and you don't know about their balance, do the split squat. If you want to do a single leg squat because you think it would be better, that would be most ideal. And then if your results differ from what you saw in the overhead squat versus a single leg squat, for the lower body, you're going to use the results from the split squat or single leg squat over the overhead squat.
Great. And here, as we move towards the loaded assessments, these are optional, but really you're going to see them early on in your training program anyways, because you're going to be doing these type of exercises. So the purpose is to see what happens when somebody starts to move some level of load. Doesn't have to be heavy, but do they find, what's their movement strategy? Do they have the ability to do it properly? Or like with a push, are they going to elevate their shoulders? Are they going to arch their low back? Is their head going to jut forward? Same thing in a pull. You may see the exact same thing. Their head comes forward, shoulders elevate, low back arches. All of those are signs of movement dysfunction that you're going to need to correct. So squat, we know the purpose of that, right? So their overhead squat might look pretty good. If their overhead squat already has plenty of movement compensations, you may not choose to load it because load isn't going to make it better. It would exacerbate those issues. And then even overhead dumbbell press, do they have any type of pain or issues going above their head? Every exercise, like I said, will always be an assessment. I said that a couple slides ago. Then when we move into dynamic, what happens as you get into locomotion, right? You start to add movement, and movement could be moderate or it could be something that's much more dynamic if the person can tolerate it. So just their gait, watching them walk away from you, watching them walk back towards you, do their feet turn out even more? Do they have the nice rotation of their spine they should? Or are they very stiff when they walk? Or the Davies test or the depth jump test. Davies is like the push-up position where I'm moving one hand, about 36 inches, 3 feet from left to right. Can I keep my core stable as I'm shifting my body weight in a closed chain? Does my scapula wing? Do I drop my head? And a depth jump. What happens when I hit the ground and jump up? Do my knees collapse? But, there should be a purpose for the assessment. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it unless you understand how to digest that information and it makes sense for that client that you're training.
So this is what I was talking about. I knew that I put it in here and I already covered this. So this is just the setup for the overhead squat. So think about what I just said before. Again, we're just looking at dynamic posture, core stability, and neuromuscular control. But just make sure you set them up in the right position first. And then any deviation, you're going to mark it.
I like it.
Yep. And so again, Marty just said it too. Even if it's minimal, you're going to mark everything that you see. So what did you see that might be different in the overhead squat versus the single leg squat, the split squat? And now we're going to dive quickly into the mobility assessments. Because as Marty said on the overview, when we were looking at the flow chart, the mobility assessments are truly going to help you with programming. So for all of you guys that have emailed me or emailed Marty or contacted us on Instagram, a lot of the times we tell someone, where do you see that you're deficient? Where do you want to grow your education? Marty and I have really dived deep into the corrective exercise. I feel that this has built my business, but having the mobility assessments, taking away the goniometer, which is something we have used for many years, and now being able to do a mobility assessment quickly, showing the client what to do, have them try to do it, mark it if they can, of a yes or no. Now that really can help me pinpoint exactly what to do, which is going to take time away from how long they've got it. We keep guessing, and then we're going to hit our goals quicker because they're going to move better, feel better, perform better each and every time.
Yeah, that's the key thing, is get reproducible results, understand what you're seeing, and be efficient with your time. So Wendy, with the mobility assessments, again, this is just we're going to talk about a big overview. We go in great depth when we teach this content or you take the course. So some of the ones here, Wendy's favorite joint, I feel, is the first MTP joint, right? So that weight bearing lunge, can they get to that close to 70 degrees? And again, we go into great detail what that should look like when we're teaching the course. The knee, we have knee flexion and extension, range of motion and mobility assessments. Then for the lumbopelvic hip complex, the modified Thomas test. So basically you're sitting off the edge of like a massage table. where does your hip fall? And that'll tell us which one of the hip flexors you need to target. Is the knee abducted to the TFL? Is the knee elevated so it's more psoas? Is the knee extended where it's more the rectus femoris? Again, these little things allow you really to focus in and lock in on which joints you need to attack. Then we've got hip internal and external rotation, which is critical. There's a pass fail, so you can move past that. And then also lumboflexion and extension. So Wendy, do you want to jump in on the shoulder and head?
Yeah, I mean, again, guys, these are just some of the mobility assessments. As Marty's reading through it, it sounds like it's so much, and you might not perform all of them. You may only do 2 or 3 of them, or you may do 1 for each body part that we're talking about. So the big thing is don't get overwhelmed. And when we go through the PowerPoint and the podcast today, we're going to give you kind of a breadcrumb and show you how we figure all of this out. But for the shoulders, we're looking at thoracic extension, rotation. We're looking at shoulder flexion, internal and external rotation. We're also looking at the head and neck, meaning what's happening at the spine or cervical spine. So we'll do cervical extension, and we'll do lateral flexion. We'll also do rotation. And all we're doing, can they do this? Yes or no? And as you go through the course, it'll tell you, you want to see this. And if you don't see this, meaning that their face is turned and you can see the ear in line with their sternum or close to it, then it's a fail. Just put no and then move on. So these, even though there's a lot, it really doesn't take any time at all.
No, it's great information to know, and you'll see that. So the importance of mobility assessments, I'll fly through this here quick. What are we assessing at each checkpoint? So the foot and ankle, dorsiflexion. That's the ability of the foot and ankle to move without compensation. Many people need to increase their dorsiflexion. At the knee, do we have adequate flexion and extension? This takes a lot of pressure off the lumbopelvic hip complex and the foot and ankle. Then as we move up to lumbopelvic hip complex, do we have multi-plane hip mobility? That's a very mobile joint, 3-dimensionally. Can we get into hip internal and external rotation? That frees up the low back for sure. Do we have the right lumbar mobility and then thoracic mobility? We're supposed to get a lot of our motion in thoracic rotation. Most men don't. I know that for sure. And then we have to pick it up somewhere else. As we move towards the thoracic spine and shoulders, are we getting the extensibility in rotation and multiplanar shoulder mobility? Again, the shoulder is very much like a hip. It has to have that 360 degrees of motion. Then with the elbow and wrist, it becomes a little more of a hinge joint. So we have adequate flexion extension to spare the shoulder. And then the cervical spine, multiplanar cervical mobility, which is clearly necessary for optimal upper body mechanics.
Here are just some examples that you'll find in the book. Along with the book, you're also going to be able to look at different videos. I think Tony Ambler-Wright was one of the ones, along with Rick Ritchie, that did a lot of these assessments. I think Tony did most of the mobility assessments, but they'll show you the proper way of setting up. And just for example, when I say it's easy, if you're looking at the weight-bearing lunge, this person's going to get close to a wall. They move their big toe back 2 inches. They lunge forward. You make sure the back foot doesn't compensate, and does their knee touch? Yes, no. That's it. So as you go through, like I said, these are just some examples of how quick it is and some of the positions they get into. You have them do the motion and move on.
Easy peasy. So important considerations. So if you have a compensatory strategy during assessment, also indicates restrictions. So the weight-bearing lunge is more than the knee touching the wall. Critical is the setup. You got to recognize pass-fail benchmarks, right? So you're getting good data. And then these assessments can be done very quickly, very easy.
So when I talked about a breadcrumb, they use this, that's an NASM term. I'm like, what does that even mean? But I guess, like when you're feeding a bird, or if you're, I don't know, trying to make sure you don't get lost, you put something down so you find your way. But you want to think about the flow pattern, and you want to make sure that it makes sense. And Marty mentioned this. It's important to have an idea. What is the outcome of the client? What is their ultimate goal? You've gathered all that information, but now you've got to gather as much data as you can. So look at the overhead squat, write down everything you see. And then at that point, if you did a heels elevated modified overhead squat, so they just are raised, their heels are on, like, let's say a 2x4, and you had them squat down, did you notice it cleaned up? And if so, then we know that we need to focus a little bit more on the foot and ankle, or get more information about that. Then at that point, if we were looking basically at the feet turning out, okay, we noticed that maybe it did or did not clean up on the heels elevated. I'm going to go into that weight-bearing lunge test that I just told you about. Place them up against a wall, move the toe back 2 inches. Can they lunge forward? Yes or no? With the feet turning out, we have to think about the short head of the bicep femoris too, because it crosses the knee joint. And if the feet are turning out, then we know that usually the lateral gastroc is also overactive and it can shift the foot. So what ends up happening oftentimes is we want to evaluate the knee extension. We want to look at the hamstrings. Preferably, we want to see what's happening mainly at the short head of the bicep femoris. But if I'm having someone lay down and they go into knee extension, that's letting me know how are their hamstrings in general. But then I'm also going to do passive hip internal rotation, because then that's going to tell me too where the weakness or the overactivity may be. And so it's just giving me more information. Again, this is detailed in your text, but once I get that, it's going to be able to tell me what muscles I need to overact or foam roll and stretch, and which ones I need to activate to help straighten that foot back up quicker than if I just did one and not the other.
So again, this is just an example of feet turn out. So again, we'd look at the overhead squat, then we'd see the feet turn out. So we're going to check to see if it's foot and ankle. So we do the modified heel overhead squat. Then from there, we can go into weight bearing lunge test, then knee extension for the mobility assessment with passive hip internal rotation. Then you'll see here at the bottom what you'd inhibit, what you'd lengthen, what you'd activate, and what you'd integrate. So all those answers are built out for you. Don't have to memorize them right now, but the more you go through this, these things will just kind of continually fall into the right box, because you'll see that patterning.
Mm-hmm. And if you're just learning this content, remember the solutions table is in your textbook. I always tell people, if you're going to use the solutions table, use the one from corrective exercise, because it's more detailed. It will help you when learning what to do with certain compensations. However, these little nuggets of information, just roll this, just stretch that, activate this, put it all together, and then move forward. I think, as Marty said, the more you look at it and you read it, the easier it becomes.
It becomes ingrained, without a doubt. So as we blend a CES into any workout, so you inhibit and lengthen muscles that were shown to be overactive, then we activate, lengthen, and weaken muscles. Then you can pick an integration, choose 1 to 2 total body exercise per the body. And then if you want to focus on body parts, then you're moving into your phase 1. So you can see here from the way that we set it up on the slide, exactly how to do that. And then you got your cool down, and then you just go back through your self-myofascial techniques and your static stretching. Of course, all programs should be individualized and progressive, but it's, like I said, a very great targeted warm-up, or it can be with the integration exercises at the end. That could be a total exercise program for somebody right now where they just stick in CES.
Yeah. And one of the last things we wanted to follow up on, and this was because of the questions that we've gotten. Again, I'm very passionate about this because I also teach this at Penn West and all the corrective exercise courses, is people are like, okay, are they separate? And the answer to that is no, blend them. Marty just told you, go in, you know exactly what is overactive because you've gathered all the data. Pick body parts that make sense for the workout. However, you can give them a home program of foam roll this and stretch that. And I want you to do these bridges at home, or something that's simple. You can put it in the Edge app and give it to your clients. There are so many different ways of going about that. However, if I was working with an individual and I know that they had a bunch of compensations because of the assessments, and I wanted to target them, meaning target their program with the CES blended, you could do something like having them foam roll the lateral gastroc, the short head of the bicep fem, as well as the TFL. You can then static stretch the lateral gastroc. Usually what you stretch, you're going to roll, you're going to stretch. So then at that point, the lateral gastroc, short head of the bicep femoris, and TFL is what you would stretch. Dynamic stretch, if you want to add that in, because you can do something like inchworms. That way everything's getting included, but you're still putting a stretch on those calves if the feet were turning out and that's what you were focusing on. And then just quickly activation. If the feet are turning out, the medial gastroc is weak. So we want to turn the toes in and do something like a calf raise with the toes turned inward to focus more on that. We would do some anterior tibialis work with a cable or tubing. Floor bridges, because I love them. The butt's always weak. Why wouldn't you? And then at that point, if we're going to do some plyometric, or we're really going to teach some reactive type of something in their program, and really get them into going into triple extension and flexion as they go up and down. We're going to do something like a squat jump with a stabilization holding, of course, that landing. And then I can get into the body parts. Whatever body parts in phase 1 you want to do, that's when you did it. You already did the corrective exercise to try to help with the compensation, but you can do the chest, the back, the shoulders, the biceps, the triceps, everything. Then do that as your circuit because you've already done your, and I always tell people, do your core and activation, then do your single leg stuff, then do your reactive, and do that 2 or 3 times, then do all your resistance stuff together, and then do your cool down. So this is just one example. Go through the textbook for other examples, but this is a blend of phase 1 with CES completely involved into this phase 1 workout.
Yeah, I mean, you covered it wonderfully. I don't need to add any more to this. You use the corrective exercise as that target to warm up, and it slides you right into phase 1. Perfect. So some key takeaways. The assessment process is always vital in creating effective corrective exercise programs, or any type of program, whether you're going into the other phases. Movement quality relies on optimally functioning human movement, right? Good information in, good information out. Yeah, you got to move well. Assessments results drive programming selection, right? That's clear. Whatever the assessment tells me will help me make the best decisions. And of course, exercise technique matters, because my body is going to remember what I put into it over and over and over. Corrective exercise can be done with little equipment and time. Bands, body weight, very simple, very easy to do when you take it on the road as well. So for people who travel or, don't have a lot of selection, it's actually better with lighter, less equipment. And then the NASM corrective exercise continuum will optimize movement, injury resistance, and performance for any client or athlete. Great stuff. So Wendy, before we give our information, I'm going to recap that amazing information you said at the beginning. So if you go to our show notes, there'll be a link to a survey. Wendy and I truly want your feedback. We want to know how we can continue to serve you in your educational career development needs. If you fill that out and complete it, you get an opportunity to win a $100 Amazon gift card. And no, you don't have to send Wendy and I any part of your winnings. We win by you filling out the survey.
Yeah, Marty. Okay. So, but if you guys want to email me and you have specific questions, you can always find me at wendy.batts@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13.
And my information is right here. So my Instagram is dr.martymiller72. And my email, marty.miller@nasm.org. So Wendy, great content today. I know that this is a passion for both of us, getting that corrective exercise message out there and letting people understand it's not in isolation. It can be integrated into all the other phases for people who don't just need corrective exercise. So thank you for putting this together in great detail. And for those of you who joined us, we can't thank you enough. And most importantly, we look forward to seeing you next week on the Master Instructor Roundtable.